Welcome back to the morning show here on Rise News. The clamor for electronic voting in Nigeria is on the increase, having gone a step further from manual voting to use the card readers in the country's elections. Pressure is on the Independent National Electoral Commission to go conduct elections electronically. According to the numerous voices recently, is the main opposition party in Nigeria, the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, who has threatened not to participate in future elections if the Electoral Act is amended to ensure that electronic voting is adopted by the Independent National Electoral Commission.
All right.
Well, and at a meeting with INEC on Monday, the opposition PDP also asked the electoral umpire to clarify whether Nigeria is still practicing the United States presidential democracy or Egyptian model, where the military participates and supervises elections. The position of PDP was made known by its national chairman, Uche Secondus. And joining us now to discuss the issue of electronic voting in Nigeria is Patrice, Akwara, a legal practitioner who joins us from our Abuja studios. Mr. Patrice Akwara, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning from Abuja. Let me begin by asking you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, the world is becoming digital. Technology is changing lives. Yes, but with that peculiarity in Nigeria, are we ready for electronic voting? And what should constitute electronic voting?
Anyway, well, we have been ready for electronic voting since 2015, but ironically, at the last election earlier this year, sort of rewound the hand of the clock in operational modalities of electronic voting. Electronic voting, because of the accuracy of the machines, should return a proper or a more accurate vote counting and voting counting. It should be more accurate. It should be less human influencing. But you see, in Nigeria, even the electronic voting, it's not achieving that desired. It's now being manipulated to achieve a desired end. So, I don't know. We are neither here nor there.
Okay, we're neither here nor there, but a lot of watchers will say electronic voting is the future. And if we keep saying we are neither here nor there, then it looks as though we are not ready for this democratic process and the electionary process owing to the antecedents in this country. I want to segue that into the bill that was supposed to be signed by the president before the last election that wasn't signed. We have another window now.
Okay.
What is happening?
Well, it's obvious that things, there are more to it than what we are seeing. It's obviously that, because as at the last time, that bill had passed to both chambers of the National Assembly, but the president, withheld assent and gave all manner of reasons. The last of which was that he now started citing a foreign protocol, was it ECOWAS protocol, about not changing your electoral law close to any election. All these things shows that we don't have the will, we don't have the political will. The National Assembly themselves, when you look at the composition of the leadership of the National Assembly now, and some of the things they have done recently, it's obvious that they are not interested in being independent of the executive. So we have to really tell ourselves the truth. At the level where the National Assembly does more of what the executive wants them to do, other than focusing on their core mandate, their core constitutional responsibility of making laws and looking at the situation in the country and coming up with laws that will, will socially re-engineer and recalibrate Nigeria to a better society. They, like I said earlier, they are neither here nor there. The bill had not even been repassed at the National Assembly for assent, and we have done Kogi election, Bayelsa election. One would have thought that shortly after the last general election, this Kogi election and Bayelsa election we just had last month would have been operated under a new electoral law. But you can see that it's not even part of what they're talking about. They're talking about the hate speech, things that are, pedestrian to good governance. So we can continue to talk all about this, but it doesn't form they are not looking at it as an urgent thing to be done. They're not looking at it as an urgent legislative agenda, which they ought to use to re-engineer the society.
Okay, Mr. Akwara, you've mentioned the fact that you think that this technology can be manipulated. But if we look at our cumbersome voting process in Nigeria, where we have long voters' papers, where we have the speed of even counting the votes taking 4 or 5 days sometimes, if we weigh the pros and the cons of both processes, don't you think that e-voting is the way to go if we actually want free and fair voting in Nigeria?
No doubt about it. E-voting is the future of transparent election in Nigeria. It is the future of our electoral integrity. There's no doubt about it. But the players, the INEC themselves, the National Assembly, even the Judiciary, are they ready to toe that line? You go to you find out that the lack of a legislation that stipulates stricto sensu the use of electronic as an electronic process. By the time you go to court, the court will now make a decision that since this is not compulsory, you cannot hold INEC accountable. And,
Mr. Patrice Akwara, hold your thoughts. We'll go back to the NATO summit in London, where world leaders are gathering at the venue.
Oh, yeah?
Her Excellency, Mrs. Erna Solberg, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway. His Excellency, Mr. Edi Rama, Prime Minister of the Republic of Albania. His Excellency, Mr. Mark Rutte, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. His Excellency, Mr. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary. Her Excellency, Dr. Angela Merkel, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. His Excellency, Mr. Gitanas Nausėda, President of the Republic of Lithuania. His Excellency, Mr. Egils Levits, President of the Republic of Latvia. Her Excellency, Ms. Zuzana Kaputova, President of the Slovak Republic.
Well, we'll bring you proceedings from that summit as they unfold. Back to our conversation. Patrice Akwara, a legal practitioner, is in our Abuja studios talking about electronic voting, the concept of electronic voting in Nigeria. Mr. Patrice Akwara, it will not be fair to say that the National Assembly hasn't done anything concerning electoral reforms. We do understand that the Deputy Senate President, Ovie Omoagege, introduced a bill on electronic voting that has passed second reading. But my question is, what will be different this time around? Because the 8th National Assembly, led by Senator Bukola Saraki, had attempted electoral reforms, but at the end of the day, that did not get presidential approval. What do you think will be different this time around?
I didn't say the National Assembly have not done anything. I said, as at the time before the last election, the bill was passed and presented to the president on 2 occasions. He brought it back. The reason he gave at the last moment was that, that there was this ECOWAS protocol about not amending or changing your core electoral law less than 6 months to any election, or 3 months to any election. So one would have thought that immediately after the general election, the National Assembly should have re-presented or repassed the Electoral Act, as in the Electoral Bill, and represented it to the President for him to sign, having regard that there was no that bottleneck of 3 months to a general election would have been lapped, or rather would have been removed, instead of starting all over again to do this. And what I feel is there is no political will to do the right thing in this country. That's just the truth of the matter. And we keep on making it like a talk shop. Everybody knows what to do. Look at the last election. The INEC said there was no server. And then at the Kogi election, they are talking of their card reader being manipulated. What does card reader, if the card reader reads the voting card, as in the voting card, where does it send, where, as in its input? Is it not to the server? It shows you that the Electoral Management Board, that is to say the INEC, they don't even have the integrity. As far as I'm concerned, there's no integrity in what they are doing. There's no integrity in what they are doing. So e-voting is the way forward, but the people managing the e-voting, it's still all of us, and it reflects who we are really, because just like someone said, leadership is a reflection of the people. The people who are ruling a given society, they don't come from outer space, they also come from the people. So maybe we have to have a discussion around it, and then the National Assembly should come up with a body of laws that will really checkmate and criminalize the activities of those managing the election, so much so that the law will have a teeth, not just like a bulldog, a toothless bulldog will just say this, and nobody, up till now in this country, all the electoral fraud that has been committed, very few or minimal charges with little or no conviction. So all this it emboldens those who are managing our electoral system to continue to take us for granted, to continue to work towards a predetermined end. So that's what we're talking about. E-voting is good, it's perfect, but we're not going to import people from outer space to manage it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Real quickly, I'd like to take you on this, Patrice Akwara. The process of challenging the election, going to court, even if we do e-voting, the process of challenging the election is always very, very, very touchy. In fact, there's a big saying out there, election petitions are sui generis. It's in a class of its own, and it is very difficult to prove otherwise. Part of all these electoral reforms we're looking at, should we not also look at special courts for elections that will make it possible that once you can get a very viable proof, then you can upturn elections? Because if we set that antecedents, then things will start to change. Because based on history, we have never upturned any presidential election in this country. In the nearest future, we're not sure we're going to upturn any, even if they are genuine proof. Can you hear me, sir?
I heard you
Okay.
faintly, but
I'm saying
let me
part of
respond
all
to the
of
part-
these reforms
to the
we're
part
doing.
I heard.
Okay, can you hear me, sir? Part of all these reforms we're doing.
Yes.
Is there a possibility of also,
Yes,
making a strong case for electoral court? Because going to defend or oppose these elections in court is almost a case null and void. It's almost an exercise in futility because it's very difficult to upturn, even if you have very viable proof. Can't we have a special court that talks about this? Did you hear that?
To be very sincere, yes, to be very sincere, we don't really need any special court. And just like at the presidential tribunal, election tribunal, I was talking about election procedures of being sui generis. They are just talking from both sides of the mouth. So what is sui generis? Sui generis simply means that it's on its own, as in it's independent of others. Now, how can you tell me that the proof is, as in how to prove election, that somebody committed an infraction which is criminal, is sui generis, and yet you still subject it to the standard of proof of the criminal, of the normal criminal law or body of laws we have in Nigeria? It means that it's no longer sui generis, it's no longer on its own. You see, if you say that the election petition, its own technicalities, its own procedures are independent of the normal body of laws, of criminal laws, let's take for example, then also the proof of election infraction should also be sui generis, should also take its own part. Maybe Mr. A, or rather, let's say, the number of accredited voters passed the number of those who actually voted, which is a crime. Then you stipulate that crime and don't subject it. You stipulate that act as a crime independent of the crime contained in all our body of criminal laws. Or you can say also somebody was given money that is induced to vote, which is an act of crime. The proof of it, if you are saying that election petitions are sui generis, you should also compartmentalize it according to that. You cannot just probate at the beginning and then midway you now reprobate or appropriate. It's not done. You see, when they want to favor, when they want to get to a determined end, they now use all these Latin maxims to confuse people. There's nothing confusing about Latin maxims. You can as well put it in Hausa or Yoruba or Igbo. Latin is a language like any other language in Nigeria. There's nothing technical about it. When we went to law school, everything they said as per Latin maxim was also translated in understandable English, which means you don't even need to say sui generis or anything. What I'm trying to say is this. the way to prove electoral offense or crime, because any offenses are criminal in nature, if you say that the election petition is sui generis, then determine it on its own, independent of, the criminal laws of this country. That's what I'm trying to say. Because, and having said that, having said all of that, you come to the conclusion that, just like I said before, those managing both our judicial system as per election, those managing the legislative section as per election, and even the executive, you can see how they started acting like God by arresting the Supreme Court judges, cowing the judges up front, because they just acted like God, trying to determine what will happen, and at the end, and we can see how everything played out according to a very well-written script, and yet everybody in Nigeria we just kept quiet. So, if we want all these issues to continue to form a talk shop in this country, fine and good, but we have to have the moral determination to take the bold step that will say, no, Nigeria, we cannot continue to give our children what we inherited from our fathers, because it's no longer working. That's my opinion about that.
Okay, Mr. Akwara, you have just spoken about taking a bold step and still on the push for the amendment of the Electoral Act. The People's Democratic Party very recently came out and threatened not to participate in the future elections if the Electoral Act is not amended. Is this the kind of bold step you're talking about? Do you consider this too extreme, or exactly what we need to make sure that we see this reform?
Thank you. Desirous as that is, desirous as that statement by PDP and that stand is, but PDP, have they sanitized their own internal democracy mechanism? I've always been a member of PDP. I contested for the Federal House in 2015 primaries. I contested for the Federal House primaries of PDP in 2018, yes. PDP's own internal democracy is in fact, INEC is even better than as in PDP's own internal democracy. You cannot go to equity with dirty hands and you want justice, you want equity to avail you. You see, the whole thing is just like, for example, in PDP, it's all about money. Voters, it's all about money, or who the godfather, maybe the governor or the national chairman want returned as the party candidate. That's exactly, okay, it just played out in Bayelsa. It just played out in Bayelsa. That's exactly what has been happening since I've been running for election in PDP. They just come up with, at the last minute, somebody will just bring up to 250,000, or take people on oaths, and they will ensure that they vote accordingly. So if we want to sanitize our electoral process, we even have to start from the parties. See what happened in Imo State under APC at the last election. See what happened in Zamfara. That's why Zamfara don't even have a there was no candidate for Zamfara election. See what's happening everywhere. So the PDP, desirous and beautiful as that position is, but you have to, charity must go out, but it has to start from home. Charity begins at home, but it must go out. But their own charity wants to start outside. But let it start from home. What I'm saying, in effect, is that the society, the media, which is the fourth estate of the realm, should really help us to look inwards, to help us to shine torchlight in all these electoral.
Mr. Patrice, thank you very much. It's definitely an ongoing conversation with staggered elections coming up next year and then general elections in 2023. We do appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.